Assumption interest.
All right, well, we're coming up pretty close to 5 after, so I'll go ahead and get us moving unless anybody had any other little pre-business to get to. All right, well, let's go ahead and get underway. Welcome everybody to the May 2nd, 2024 meeting of the Technical Advisory Council of the Confidential Computing Consortium. Welcome to this meeting where, like what we do together in open source and in our special interest groups and in other things that we do together, we think that working together as a community is the best way that we can all move forward with confidential computing and help protect our shared infrastructure. Also, in working together, since some of us work in competing companies, we abide by the antitrust policy of the Linux Foundation. You can see that at linuxfoundation.org/antitrust-policy. For today's meeting, we will recap a few things from the last session, and then we'll talk about 2 new things that came out of the board, and then get into 2 different mentoring discussions. One I failed to copy out in the agenda that was sent to the mail list, but we've talked about it off and on for several months now, and that's having TAC mentors of projects, and so we'll come around to that. And then Yash has some updates with Sal on the mentoring process. We have a tech talk today about reproducible and testable UEFI. And that should probably bring us through. I think we got maybe a couple other things in the mix there as well. I think it's maybe just an ordering thing here. I think we'll probably hit the internship stuff after the reproducible UEFI tech talk. Any other business that we need to have reflected here today? Okay, well, with that, let's get into our introductions. So typically we do not take formal roll call unless we have something that we need to vote on. And part of our culture of minimum viable governance is that we tend not to have a lot of votes. But today we've got a few new updates to this list. I see Catherine Jang has joined us from Google, so welcome, Catherine. Catherine's going to be replacing Catalin and Kfir. We thank them for their time up to this point. Catherine, I might put you on the spot in a second here to introduce yourself, kind of talk about what you do with confidential computing, and let people know where you're joining from.
Sure. Thank you, Dan. So, hi, I'm Catherine Zhang. I have been at Google for actually over 10 years. So my current job is Eng Manager for the confidential VM offering at Google. So that includes the Intel and AMD product lines. So before then, I was actually a security researcher at IBM research for over 13 years. So I had worked on the original integrity measurement architecture, the TPM work at IBM research, and a remote attestation and along that lines. And so really glad to be here and working with you all in advancing confidential compute.
Thanks, Catherine. Catherine has also not advertised her background with the IMA framework for Linux, which a few people pointed out to me when we got introduced. So great to have Catherine joining us.
Thank you.
And let's see here. So we have so I don't think David Kaplan is able to join us for the first half of the hour, but David will be joining us from AMD. AMD has increased their membership from General to Premier, so we welcome AMD's increased participation here, and we will hopefully get a chance to say hi to David later this meeting or the next. And we might have one more. Nope. Might have one more new addition here, but not at the moment. So with that, in a minute, we'll encourage other people who are new to the forum to introduce themselves. But first, I want to say thank you to Ben and Lily. I think Lily is not on, so we'll start with Lily. Lily is handing off some of the shared role with Red Hat and IBM to Ram, who you saw in the previous slide. So Ram Pai will be joining us moving forward, working with Yash. But thanks to Lily for really leaning in over the last couple of years that she's been involved. Really one of our most active contributors to help set the stage for getting our projects working together and a lot of the constructive things that have happened within the community. So thanks to Lily. And then also, we will be soon to welcome Helen back from leave. And that unfortunately means saying goodbye to Ben. And I want to thank Ben for parachuting in. I think maybe he was back in November-ish timeframe. Very, very quickly coming up to speed and having an impact. That's a tough thing to do with a group that's been working together for a long time and figure out all of the tribal knowledge that we had. That you have to kind of magically figure out. And now we have new processes in place, like how we onboard projects. So other people don't have to figure out tribal knowledge. We actually have process. And I think that's a lasting value add from Ben. So thanks, Ben. And Ben won't be going far. Ben is still with the Linux Foundation. We'll be working on other projects, lesser projects, of course, but yeah, we'll welcome him back anytime. Might continue to lean on him for the next couple of weeks while we bring Helen back up to speed.
Ben,
right,
could you remind us what? Firstly, thank you, Ben, from me as well. And Ben, could you remind us when Helen officially restarts?
Monday.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
Yep. So this is the point in the meeting where if you have not joined us and introduced yourself at least twice, you are welcome to come off of mute. Let us know where you're joining from and what your interest is in confidential computing and how you prefer to be addressed. And you don't have to be shy about doing that. If you step on somebody else's audio, we sort that out really easily.
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Aditya Gurujada. I'm a member of the Certifier Framework for Confidential Computing project, which was started at VMware, and now in January or so, it got moved over to the CCC umbrella. So I'm kind of starting to attend this. We are trying to revive some more active work on that project amongst people who contributed to that. So I want to thank Rian, I don't know if you got the name right. I got a lot of help from you and from Ben and others on onboarding the project and logistics in terms of the project page and so on. So anyway, I'm going to try to attend, and maybe later in the meeting I have a request for an agenda item representing John Manfredelli, but I'll bring that up later on. So anyway, that's my background, and I'm from the Bay Area.
Great. Thanks for joining us, Aditya. And we really like having this new project with us with the Certifier Framework. And why don't you go ahead and just, if it makes sense, you can just suggest the agenda item now, and then we capture that in the minutes and work on getting that scheduled.
Yeah, so this is really on behalf of John Manfredelli. He's been looking at, and I'm kind of reading his mail and paraphrasing, the two candidate quantum resistant algorithms which are published by NIST. And he named some names, FIPS 203 and FIPS 204. And he did some investigation of that, whether they will work. I think with the certifier framework, there's no hardware support right now yet, but he said he would be ready, or he could be ready to share his learnings and findings with the larger team. He's kind of spearheading this foresight to see whether these proposed standards from NIST kind of will fly and, whatever he discovered, right? So he offered to do that. He's traveling today, but given some advance notice, he'd be happy to maybe present a little summary talk to the team here.
Great, Mike.
So, yeah, so very on point, a very good thing. So I have made contact with some folks in the fairly newly formed post-quantum group or whatever it's called in the Linux Foundation, which is looking at this in particular, and they have said they'd be interested in coming and presenting to the TAC. A good friend of Dan's, who we need to track down the email address for. And it sounds like actually combining that with a conversation with John would be perfect. So we could, everyone could talk at the same, talk around the same subject. So
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of making that happen. So thanks, Aditya, for bringing that to us, and good on John as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I don't know this enough. John's this big crypto guy, and he poked at this to see whether these new standards are going to stand up and so on. I requested to John, and we'll probably work on that offline, write up a wiki in our own project page describing what he found, right? And maybe we will put that up as collateral. So let me take that back to John.
It's the sort of thing that, we might, after some discussion in the TAC, even consider doing a white paper or publishing some blog posts and stuff. I think there's lots of interest in this. So that sounds like a really interesting thing to be doing. Dan,
Right.
do you agree, or am I overstepping?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. And I guess we can hold it to be simultaneously true that both presenters will present until we go and inspect that state.
Yeah. And just one last request, John, I'm making on behalf of John. He travels a lot, so it'd be good to schedule this out a little bit in advance so he can free up his time slot.
We need to get him entangled.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, that's it.
I got yours, Dan. I got it. It's fine.
I know, I saw. All right. Anybody else who has not had a chance to introduce themselves at least twice to the community?
I think I count.
I think so, Deanna.
I'm Deanna Glaze. I work with Catherine at Google on confidential VMs. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm a presenter today. I'll be talking about how I plan on making the Google provided virtual firmware a little bit more trustworthy from a remote attestation perspective.
Well, we are privileged to have you here today, Deanna. Thanks for joining. Okay, so if anybody else would like to introduce themselves, feel free to interrupt me. I will start stepping forward, though. I won't have my feelings hurt if you interrupt. Last time, we sort of re-welcomed Coconut SVSM as they finished their final stage. So thanks to everybody who got that over the line. And then the TAC mentors discussion came up again. And so we'll fit that into our agenda today. Sort of requested that we talk about that in this meeting. And then we got an update from the Open Enclave project. Always good to get the latest on what our projects are up to. And so we'll also be talking a little bit about that schedule today as well, the schedule of project updates, and it's sort of conjoined with this mentoring discussion. Thank you for the typo correction. So we just touched on this post-quantum thing. So Mike and I need to sort out some coordination there. And then it occurred to me when I was putting this in that Ben had been doing some of that coordination. And so making sure that that was recognized in the handoff with Rian. I see heads nodding. Great. We had, trying to think off the top of my head, we might have one or two other loose threads on that to pull together. We also spent time last time with the document that Mike had written about barriers to adoption. This document can at least serve as a good way for us to prioritize our work in the consortium across the board and the TAC, making sure we've got some joint priorities. So you can find the link to that doc in the minutes from the last meeting if you don't know what I'm referring to, or anybody's welcome to drop that into chat.
Yeah, and I'd say that I plan to tie that up maybe in a couple of weeks' time so that we kind of remove all the comments and try and bring everything together. But so you've got a couple of weeks to look at it while I'm at RSA basically next week. Please do so, and and I can't promise I'll have anything ready for the next TAC meeting, but it's that sort of timescale that I'm hoping to do that.
Great. And then we have, these have been repeated in the last few minutes. There's some request from the GRC SIG to give some input into a document they're working on. This is kind of like best practices for how you apply confidential computing. And then the mentorship program is something we'll be talking about today. Any other old business? Let me know. Moving forward, we've got two things that kind of fit into the announcements, and we'll make some discussion about them. One is that it was recognized on the board that any conference you go to these days, if your topic does not include AI, you probably do not get a speaking slot. If your project does not include AI, it might be harder to get it through whatever committees you have in your own companies or public communities. So when we look at the Confidential Computing Consortium's webpage, does it come through that confidential computing is a beneficial ingredient to securing AI? And we don't think that it does. But it's not just updating the website. It is also thinking about the kind of work that we're doing within the TAC and within the projects to make sure that people see the relevance of this security technology to the, one of the most important computing trends in front of us today. Mike.
Yeah, so just to say that this repositioning job isn't aimed to be just about AI. It's the most obvious thing, but things like we don't talk about privacy particularly. Maybe we should talk about collaborative computing or multi-party computing as well. So what the plan is to do is to work out what repositioning we need to be doing for the CCC, because a lot of the website, if you go to it now, is about what the technology is rather than about what benefits and what use cases. And we've got some use cases coming, so that's all on its way. So this is really a plea to make sure that at least one person from your company, if this is something you care about, and it should be, is aware of, or preferably even taking part in the work group. The working group that we're talking about. So sorry if I've misrepresented that before.
No, thank you for expanding that. I was a bit myopic on AI. We do absolutely need to address AI. The link here, I think, goes to documents about the web page and what outreach is doing. What I would like us to think about on the TAC is what kind of projects and initiatives that we're doing within the SIGs as relates to not just AI, but as Mike just said, privacy, even though he mispronounced it as privacy. And another very important topic right now is secure software supply chain. And we've had a speaker last fall who came in and talked about things that are going on in some of the CNCF projects. And so there's a sort of second tangent to this, which is there is some interest in a few of the companies that are participating in both CNCF and the CCC to work a little more closely together. And there is a thread going around that we'll have to find a way to surface within probably the next TAC meeting, talking about what sort of AI projects we could bring forward that work on some of the foundational projects that we have created in the CCC and that we also have in the CNCF, where a lot of what we have in both places are sort of middleware flavored projects, and to get a top level use case that exercises on top of both of those aspects of the stack is something that we really need to kind of tie everything together end to end so that people can see where we're going. Rian.
And I would, sorry, I'm sorry, just briefly, I would add anything else we think of. Zero trust, another one that comes up, identity, etc., etc. Sorry, Rian.
No worries. The call for action on the documents. We want people to sign up, join the working group. There is also in the document, if you want to follow the link, there is a schedule. We want to try and get this rolling in front of the board, governing board in the next 6 weeks. So we want to move rather fast than slow to cooperate on this. What is definitely out of scope is to actually update the website. So don't worry if you sign up that you have to do the work for the web update, but we do need the information, and the LF team will sort out the updates to make us look actual to what we're doing.
Thank you. I should maybe not move off of that so quickly. Was there any other clarifying questions or thoughts from the rest of the group here? Okay, so I'll summarize that as, follow this link and do the things that Rian just said, but then also as the technical leaders from the community, we want to really get projects out that showcase these important use cases and how those things can build on top of our more infrastructure-oriented projects.
Sorry to jump in after you asked for a question, but I didn't say anything then, but the document is denied for me, access denied. So I'm not sure if it's just me or if it's just not publicly visible, but I can't access the document.
I will make it publicly visible. Sorry if I missed your request for access.
Sorry, is that just personally only? Sorry, I thought it was just a general, because I would then send it around or something if it's generally publicly accessible.
So all of our docs are typically public. Everything we do here, we try to make transparent. Sometimes we want to have, the board has the discretion to limit things, but I would think that this document would be visible. Usually when people create a Google Doc, though, it has some default permissions that we have to clean up.
Yeah, exactly. So this seems to be still
yeah. Sometimes we have the everybody but Fritz policy on documents. I don't think this is one.
Yeah, that's why I just wanted to check.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for raising that. Okay. The next thing that I recall coming out of the board meeting was a refresh on the topic of conformance. You could think of this maybe more tersely as a certification. About a year ago, we had some discussion about this, and the idea is that whatever definitions we apply to confidential computing, we usually do that to try to provide clarity so that adopters understand what security guarantees that they're getting, what sort of protections that they are or are not getting when they make use of confidential computing. There is no enforcement mechanism on that, though. So any company could come along and claim to be offering confidential computing and just be, an entirely malicious company. But even without that wild example, there's no enforcement. And so what the board wanted to restart was a discussion of how could we drive more conformance to the definitions that we set forth in the consortium, up to and possibly including a certification test. There is, if I've got it somewhere that I dug up for the board, the sort of a matrix of different conformance and certification practices that Dave Thaler had created for us. What we did about a year ago, though, was we kind of delegated that out to the governance, risk, and compliance SIG. And I don't think a owner emerged there to carry that work forward. So whenever we have a new interest in an initiative in open source, not just in the CCC, it always requires somebody to take action on it, somebody to own it. These things are always duocracies.
Yeah. No, we're happy to take it on, but we would probably need additional members to join with an interest in this particular topic. So our SIG is small, and we handle so much. But if somebody wants to participate with us, of course we'll make time and dedicate time to this.
Thanks, Mark. And that's absolutely what I was getting to, is it's not on Mark or the existing participants in the GRC SIG. It's an assumption that people from your companies, your projects that are interested in this will take ownership. So my feedback to the board, just hold that thought for a sec, Mike. My feedback to the board is, if the board companies really want to see this happen, they should be talking to you as TAC members or others within your company, so that it's actually a staffed activity. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Dan, you said the question of how we should do this as a CCC. The question is also whether. It's absolutely not a definitive thing. It's the GB wants partly the wisdom of the TAC to see whether this is a sensible thing from a technical point of view, because there's a whole bunch of legal things and organizational things and all that sort of stuff as well. But is it something that we as the TAC or subgroups think is important? And while I agree that the GRC is well positioned to do this, I would expect the GRC to say, well, here are some ways we could approach it, then bring it to the TAC, and the TAC could maybe have a discussion about that. This is not something that we can just farm off, as I know you weren't saying that, to the TAC, to the SIG. So hopefully we can kind of bound, Mark, what the GRC SIG might be looking to do. Maybe we should have a conversation about that over email.
I think our intention throughout in the GRC SIG is to work on a problem, and then take the result, like we're hoping to do perhaps later today in some of the documents we've worked out, and then present it to the TAC and say, okay, this is what we're thinking. It's now ready for broader consumption. So I actually don't think our MO is going to change with this.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
I'm specifically referring to the amount of expertise and participation. Like, if we're going to talk about different layers of the confidential computing, right, starting from what a chip manufacturer might provide to what a firmware vendor might want to provide, to like just keep going, right? We would like to have participants from those constituencies who actually work on this and can give us the expertise. Now, I have a lot of it, having worked on all of these things, but I don't want to be the dictating force, and for obvious reasons.
That's tremendous restraint on your part.
I think it's very sensible.
So, especially since we've got some new TAC members here, just recognize we have these SIGs, and each one of these SIGs, in order to get work done, we need people from your company, yourself, other subject matter experts to show up. And that's a good segue to two interrelated things. So this is the tracking sheet that we have for when the projects come in to give their annual updates. And so we just heard from OE, for example, last session. And we also track mentors. And as we started to grow the number of projects, maybe beyond the number of TAC members we have, there was an issue opened up, number 207, where we wanted to generate some thinking about, do we stay one-to-one with TAC members? And again, somebody who regularly shows up to the TAC and can provide the kind of connection between projects and the technical governance, even if they're not a voting member, they are more than welcome to sign up for this role. And so we technically can go well beyond the number of voting members. I think we have, if I can get my screen here, got about 18 people now. Typically we have about 24 people on the call. So we could grow one-to-one so long as people are willing to volunteer that way. The main alternate proposal was to come up with subject matter expertise, where each member of the TAC wants to list themselves under a type of guidance that they're willing to give the projects, and then the projects can come to that TAC member in order to have those discussions. discussion more or less has quieted down on this without any clear consensus, and we don't really have a good sense from the projects what they want. Lily is moving on in her role, and she was one of the people that kept good connections with the projects, and I don't know that we got a clear sense from some of the surveying that she did. So what I first want to do is just open this up to a little bit more discussion about what the newly formed TAC, since quite a few people have changed out since we started this discussion. I want to get thoughts just verbally from people on where they're thinking with this, and then based on any direction we hear, then I've got some thoughts about how we move this forward.
Maybe I can jump in directly because thanks, Dan, for putting it on the agenda. For context, right after the last TAC, I ventured out to send an email to all of the projects to query them for their stance on this. And I still think that's something we should do. I just didn't do it yet. So I wanted to wait for this discussion also here today to do it. But I'm happy to query the projects on what they think, because me personally, I don't know, I don't see value in all of these mentor roles, but that doesn't mean that they don't have value, right? That's just like my bias on this without being involved on the project side. So I'm happy to query the projects from my end, but I wanted to, also maybe ask Sal or also Aditya, because we have one project here already now today, on what they think.
Yeah, I think so. I think that we should send out another survey. I mean, we've got a couple of new projects that have come in the last couple of months as well. I think we should ask about the specific. I think the SME approach makes the most sense here, but I think allowing them to make requests for the type of SMEs if we need to reach out makes sense, because right now, if we had the experts in the room, we would probably already have them help them with the project. So we probably will have to query out. But yes, I would love to send just a short survey, 3 or 4 questions out to the projects and see exactly what kind of support they need to be able to move forward with this kind of work.
My name was called out. This is Aditya. Actually, I'm not even sure I understand what is the role or the service that these mentors provide to the project. We were just onboarding the certified framework, and I got a ton of help from Rian, just logistically and operations, right? Just to get, so that was great. I mean, is that part of mentorship? If it is, yeah. So that was very helpful. I had some issues with meeting minutes and all that stuff. So I'm not really sure, what is expected from this mentor thing.
Well, I can.
That's a great question.
Yeah,
go ahead.
I'll speak a little bit to that. So I am the TCA. I have been busy with events for most of the last month, and my team has been taking on the role of onboarding. So in part, there's a little bit of the TCA in our community role of getting you help to get set up. But specifically, and I think this is interesting for you to consider, what this is a request for any subject matter expertise, right? If you needed assistance with onboarding and getting set up, right? Should we make that a stable SME request where people know exactly who to ask? Things around, right, setting up your security protocols for your repo. Those can be SME supports. Just spot assistance with your projects as maintainers.
So there's a couple, thank you for that, by the way, Sal. There's a couple references to TAC members acting as mentors for projects. I think Jörg is on as well, and I recall Jörg mentioning at least inquiring what that might mean when we were bringing Coconut on it at first. So if you've got some thoughts about that, Jörg, feel free to chime in. But there was maybe 2 things if we go all the way back to where this first came in. One is, do we have somebody on the TAC that's excited enough about a project proposal that they're willing to sign up? And that was sort of a big vote in favor of adopting a project. We maybe haven't really stuck with that very strongly when we reviewed projects up to date. But then the other thing is, how do you coach a project to get adopted, to maybe get through some struggles in the community, any of a variety of things that can come up, so that there's at least a connection as well between what the TAC is working on and what the projects are working on, very much bi-directionally. We have this list of, up at the top of this project progression document, we have these list of benefits. And so part of this bi-directional thing is when we talk to the projects, if the projects say, well, we really don't need test infrastructure budget, then we're just allocating budget that never gets used. But maybe they really need funding to go to conferences, and then we maybe need to bump that up. So we really want to hear in both directions. We can always get some of that in the annual updates when we check in with the projects, but that's pretty infrequent. Something else that we do from time to time is we suggest things to the projects that we think will help them and help the consortium. The most recent was suggesting use of the OpenSSF best practices badge. And most of the projects never heard about that because we've really gotten lax with this relationship with the TAC. Any other thoughts from anybody?
If there are somehow any CCC projects that are not yet aware of OpenSSF badge, please check your issues today. I'll help you get it done.
Are we expecting every contributor to sign their commits with actual keys? Because that's one of the requirements for the scorecard that's really hard to get people to do.
Exactly. And the actual automated SBOMs are not the easiest thing, although there's better support in place for those now. But what I've worked with them for about the last 6 weeks in discussing what are the things that we are all absolutely willing to do and what are the things that just don't make sense for this type of project. So if there is a good reason for not having the OpenSSF badge, we can have that discussion, but it would open them up for better visibility and funding possibly. So it's a question of, if the maintainers want to do that, it's got some benefits, but it's, for this condition, it's not CNCF. It might not make sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and good question, Tiana. Something else Sal and I discussed just recently was sort of a two-stage thing, where Sal was already getting projects going on the OpenSF scorecard. One aspect of the scorecard is the badge. So OpenSSF has a couple of these things that are interrelated, and sometimes that's confusing in and of itself. But I think if we can get what the TAC has asked for so far is getting people on the badge. I don't think that requires signed commits, but the next stage up from the badge would be to get people to a certain score level on the scorecard. But all of that is examples of coaching that people with security subject matter expertise, open source subject matter expertise could be helping with. And while we've got Sal funded to do some of that directly, Sal only can scale to like 2, 3, 4 people.
No, but I do want to come back to this discussion of what is the correct security posture for us to be sort of standardizing across these projects when it's appropriate, because I've worked with like the CLO monitor, the people that have developed the scraping for this. And if we can say very specifically, here is the badge conditions that are appropriate for our security projects, I think that would be a win, because we have a specific standard and a specific posture, and we can get scraped for that posture if it makes sense. But that's something that I'd love to be able to take as a discussion in like 2 or 3 months once we get a few badges up, if it makes sense.
Great, thank you. Okay, so
it might be that projects at different stages might be appropriate for them to have different badges. Is the other thing, of course. Sorry.
Sure. So I'm gonna move us into the next related topic here, but I hear basically 2 action items. One is there's follow up from Fritz. Fritz, thanks for picking up the ball there, and Sal to ask the community. I don't care if it's a survey, email, phone calls, whatever you think you'll get the best interaction with. And then the second thing is, without a change in policy, the plan of record is still the plan of record, which is each of us needs to be signed up to coach one of these projects. And since we've just added VerTE, the SPDM tools, certifier framework, and ILET, thanks to Alec, who is not on the call, for already volunteering for Jörg's project. We need people to sign up to help interact with those projects. And so I will pause for a moment here to see if anybody would like to get their name out. Again, this is not necessarily voting members. This is anybody who regularly participates on the TAC.
You can put me down for the SPDMRS then if no one wants to like wait on me for that one, or if no one wants to jump forward, feel free to put me.
Okay. I'm going to wreck the formatting on this.
No, it's fine.
He's very important. He should be in a really big font.
Okay, so this is helpfully a linked table. Oh, and it's already magically there. Thanks. Okay. All right.
There should be a Z. There we are. No, that's right. Not an S. Z.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks again, Fritz.
I could do VerTE. Would that be a conflict of interest because the maintainer is also from Red Hat and I actually work with VerTE? I don't know.
It is in no way a conflict of interest.
Okay.
I like to encourage cross-community mentors, though.
Okay.
And I should also point out, I don't know what Lily's plans are with Keystone.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Yeah. So as part of the handoff, I think Ram has been asked to take over the mentorship for Keystone. And I think he's agreed. So yeah, Ram from IBM will be doing that.
Ram Pai from IBM.
Ram Pai from IBM. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, and then we have also 3 SIGs. I've been providing the connection with the attestation SIG. Mark wears 2 hats, showing up regularly to the TAC and chairing the governance, risk, and compliance SIG. We've just kicked off this kernel SIG, and so we also need a name here. So if you're somebody who regularly interacts with kernel issues for your company or for another CCC project, this would be a great role to help connect.
I can tentatively volunteer but I need to learn more about it.
That's very much a good reason to be a member, right? If to learn more about it, to be a mentor, it's a great reason.
Fantastic, Catherine. Thank you.
No one's the expert in everything.
And it's just getting underway still, so there's not a steep learning curve of historical things for you to know about. The next meeting for this one, by the way, I will mention, is Friday the 10th. I don't know that I will be in attendance, but there's some topics that I'm hoping to see on the agenda for that meeting that I think are of interest to several of the companies here. And I will just maybe tease that there's work underway about how you do runtime measurements, and there's a couple different patches out on the Linux kernel mailing list about 2 different aspects of that, 2 unrelated aspects, and want to help drive those to closure using this forum that we've set up where people get to talk live instead of trying to parse a very long and dense email thread. So that will be I think 10 a.m. Pacific time, but you can check the schedule on the Confidential Computing website. All right, there is one last thing before we let before we get Diana up here. And Diana, how are we on your schedule? Are we good for if I take another 5 minutes here, or were you expecting to get going already?
That's fine.
Thank you. So, in fact, that's probably going to take longer than 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and jump into our TAC talk. What I was about to get into is the schedule that we have for the rest of the year. Typically, each meeting we've got 3 different main topics. We've got one of our TAC goals that we're working on. We've got something project related, like a project coming in for their update or maybe giving a demo. And then we've got a tech talk. So something that we keep ourselves technical with in this forum as technical leaders. If there's projects going on within your company, something interesting, or you've read a research paper and you can recruit that researcher in to give the talk, all things that we've done in the past to have some interesting technical discussions here. And so volunteering today from Google is Diana, and I will let you reintroduce yourself and what you're going to talk about today.
I'm going, there, good. Let me just share my screen. Okay, y'all see that?
Okay. All right, well, we will have to leave it on that note. We've got a few other things to hit here, so one last time, thanks again, Diana. Really enjoyed it, and I'll be trying to circulate this as well as I can. All right, 2 topics I still want to get through before the hour wraps up. One is Yasha's, and as a brief interlude before we get there, we have these objectives that we set at the beginning of the year. We want to improve things for our projects, interact with the ecosystem, get them to recognize confidential computing, and make sure that we're reaching out to grow as wide of and inclusive of a community as we can. Different people have volunteered leadership over different times across these. We want to get more structured in how we execute, and so we have begin to sketch out when each of these TAC goal topics comes in. And I've asked Ben to start getting names on dates so that we're more predictable there. So you should see your name somewhere along the progression of the year. These are kind of placeholders, so feel free to negotiate times, but make sure you understand what it is you are delivering. And I've tried to get these more or less organized by the amount of time that you've been here, so you already have a sense of what it is that you're signing up to lead, maybe with the exception that David got pretty early in the schedule here, so we can work with you on that. And we introduced you in absentia, David, well at the beginning of the meeting. And just want to double check, yes, you are still on the call. So give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, joining as the TAC member from AMD. We'd love to know where people are coming from, what your particular work is with confidential computing, and how you like to be addressed.
Well, hi, everyone. I think many of you may know me already. Of course, I'm a security architect at AMD. I've been the lead architect for AMD's SEV features for quite a while. I've actually been working in the confidential computing space, or as it's called now, for over 10 years, and done numerous talks on it. So excited to be part of this group. Otherwise, yeah, David is fine. My background here is actually in the hardware side. I was a CPU architect before doing this. And I would say that right now, a lot of my focus is on getting ecosystem enablement support, especially in Linux, for a number of the capabilities that we have, including things like SVSM support. So certainly happy to talk about that. I will let you know that I'm not going to be able to do July 25th date. I'll email you, Dan. We'll figure out some alternative. But yeah, nice to meet all you.
Well, we're so happy to have you joining us, David.
Thanks.
And your preferred pronouns?
Just normal. He, him is fine.
He, him. Great. All right. Thanks again. Oh, and Ron Perez said to say hi to you.
Well, Ron used to be my boss, so I appreciate that.
For those who don't know Ron is our chair over on the governing board. Also my boss. So we have one more topic and hopefully enough time to do it justice. One of the services that, or one of these goals that we have is growing the community. And Yash is taking the lead along with Sal to add more structure to the intern or mentoring programs that we have. We've kind of overloaded that mentoring word. And I've got, I thought I had the, so in the agenda is linked to the main issue where we're raising a lot of that, but I'll turn things over to Yash to go through things how you would like to.
Sure, thanks, Dan. So yeah, so it's linked on slide 20. So if you scroll down to slide 20. So we are ready to kick off the first ever mentoring program for the CCC. It'll be very similar to the CNCF's Linux Foundation mentoring program, which is linked on the very first point. So what we require from CCC projects, so if you're a TAC mentor of a CCC project, or if you're a project lead, we require ideas from projects that are work blocks that could be roughly completed in 12 weeks. We need a mentor who is able to dedicate time to the project and in assisting the mentee that will be picked for the project. And yeah, participate in it actively and give back to the community. So the project template, which is also linked here in point 3, this is actually from the PR that Sal has started to update our mentoring docs. It's very similar to the CNCF, where I have linked a couple of examples for their summer term. So if you could, yeah, Dan, if you could open the template, it actually covers what is required. So the first one. Yes, so the project idea would require a description, the expected outcome, the mentee skills, and then at least 1 or 2 mentors who are willing to spend time in mentoring this applicant and making sure that the work is completed. So an action item for the TAC members in the call right now is to go review the pull request with the docs that Sal has started, so we can get them completed as soon as possible. So if you could, Dan, if you could go back to the, thanks, Dan, it's linked in the chat. So if you could go to the next slide. So here's what I'm proposing. The tentative schedule for the mentoring program, I'm proposing it to start on the 15th of July. It'll run for 12 weeks, so mid-July to mid-October to the October 15th. CCC projects have a month from now to submit their ideas. Because the docs aren't ready yet, I am proposing that the mentors could submit their ideas to the project leads mailing list, which would also kind of encourage other projects to submit their ideas as well. We will have the project ideas on the Linux Foundation portal ready by the first week of June. And then the mentee applications for them will be open for about 4 weeks, so from the first week of June to the first week of July. Once we have mentee applications for these ideas, there'll be about 2 weeks to interview and finalize the right mentee who has the right set of skills to start their mentorship for these projects. And then mid-July to mid-October is when it will run. So the logistics for this would be the same as any other Linux Foundation mentorship. The details for this will be shared on the project leads mailing list, and they're also linked in the docs. So again, if you could review the docs that Sal has started, all the links are and all the details of the program are mentioned in that pull request. Right. So what's the plan now? So the first thing is, if you're a TAC mentor, or if you're a project, or if you're a maintainer, submit your ideas to the mailing list. Once the docs are ready, they'll be converted to a pull request on the mentorship repo. Ali Oak, who runs the CNCF mentoring program, along with Nate Waddington, who actually presented to the TAC back in February, has agreed to meet with me and Rian to finalize the dates and how the term should look like for the CCC. So those are the first two things. TAG members, as I mentioned before, please review the docs, and let's try to get them completed as soon as possible. My goal, our goal, me and Sal discuss this, is to get them merged by the end of next week. So the docs and the mentoring repo is ready by the 10th of May. And then I will work with the outreach team to advertise the project ideas that have been submitted to the right channels, so we can reach the right audience to get mentee applications. So yeah, that's the overview. Any questions, concerns so far? Rian, yes, go ahead.
Then something else that I just want to add on to that. So this is important to note that the work need to be work that the project have, the way they need help, and where they have somebody that's willing to assist with the help, and it is being paid for out of the mentorship funds. So the mentee is actually being paid and monitored to ensure that the work does get done. So this whole process, it's not, you don't have to worry about the process, but be sure it's a proper relationship. It's not for getting work done in your project. So identify something that you want done. So it's not just you helping somebody to get onboarded. It's a question of finding real work that needs to be done and finding a candidate with the right skills that can actually perform the work. You just need to oversee it.
Yeah, this is Aditya. I'll read the PR and all that. Could you give us a quick idea of an example project which could be a candidate for this kind of mentorship? I'm kind of lost on what are these projects.
I would be happy to take that on. So there are a couple of different scopes that you can provide, but it's something that has to be able to be done inside of 3 months. And also, I'd be particular here to be sure that it's something that someone doesn't need a strong pre-existing expertise in confidential computing to do. So a good example of where I often have run into CNCF mentees in the past is when I'm reaching out for security interventions, or particularly, for example, for badging. So you'll bring in a mentee and they will help you to get your compliance, all of your things up to date, help you with your READMEs, and become more familiar with your project. Another way that I'll put this is for more advanced or security projects. I tend to like to have people think of this as a mentorship program to train someone who might be your next potential maintainer. So sort of having that in mind. Someone who's strongly familiar with the project that would be able to stay and contribute, because these are paid mentees and they tend to come with strong technical expertise already. So that is to say, do be sure to, when you scope these projects, I do like to say, make a note of the technical skills that you would require up front. So.
Thank you.
Yeah. So an example would be that if the the certifier framework, if it wants to add a feature, or if it wants to add an API that maybe the current maintainer does not have time to work on, but if you are willing to mentor a willing mentee who has the right set of skills, that they can do that in a period of 12 weeks, that would be a good way to get more people to contribute to your project and add an additional maintainer who now knows about that API to your project. So
yeah, so one last simple question, right? A silly thing that we wanted to do is to port the certifier framework to run on Mac OS X. Right now, it only works on Linux. Would that kind of a project qualify for this kind of thing, or is that too like low level and uninteresting?
Sounds good to me.
that's actually a very good example of what this, because you are expanding the platforms on which your project goes, which could actually get more people to start be interested in and contribute to, but you like the existing maintainers don't have the time, so you participate in this. So it's a great example.
Okay, thank you.
Right, we are almost out of time, so Dan, back to you.
Great. So let's make sure that we please capture in the minutes that people are required to get their feedback into the issue by, let's say, the end of the week, and so that gives a week for Sal and Yash to address the feedback so that it's published before the 10th. I will also connect these two mentoring concepts, that of the TAC mentoring projects, or coaching them, along with mentors from the projects working with, call them interns from the community. Projects that aren't at this meeting or who aren't watching the mail list won't know about this opportunity. And then also just recognize that we're asking for time from our projects in order to do this, and it should be of mutual benefit. Like we just said, they're going to get work done for their project, but we need to be able to communicate that through the people who've signed up to interact with the projects here. And maybe the very last thought on that is thinking about all of us who are here in this meeting. A great way for you to get involved with the open source that's happening, if you're not already, is to maybe act as one of these mentors, so you and the incoming community person can kind of learn together in getting involved in a project. That also takes some additional burden off of the maintainers. So I believe that brings us to the end of what we wanted to cover today. We've got about 30 seconds if anybody had any last parting shots. And if not, I will wish you all well for the rest of your day, and until we speak again at another CCC meeting or over GitHub issue or any of the many ways that we interact. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Tim.